Great. So most of you should be familiar, but if you guys have any issues with the video kind of switching between the people who are talking, you can always pin this screen that I'm sharing so that remains kind of your main video. So, all right, looks like we've got a few people. Dave, are you ready to get going, or?
Yes. Awesome. Excited to get rolling. Look forward to the opportunity.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and get started here then. So welcome everyone to our virtual info. The first time we've done something like this. So this will be, a lot of fun to try this for the first time. So as you all know, we're here from Ivory Homes. We're specifically recruiting for a management training program, and you can find all those details on Handshake, and we'll talk a little bit more specifically about those throughout the presentation today. Let's see if I can get these slides there we go. Okay, so just some quick introductions here before we get started. So I'm Helaman. My picture's there on the right-hand side. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I'm actually finishing school out here at BYU. So I'm a senior studying economics and political science. This is my last semester, so I'll be graduating this spring. This is me and my dog up in the Seattle area kayaking. So I like to, go outdoors, go on hikes, and enjoy kind of the scenery out here out west. The mountains are amazing, so that's been great to be out here. Dave, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and take it forward?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Dave Broadbent. I am a U grad. I graduated, gosh, it's been about 17 years ago now. This is my crew, my wife and my 3 children, ranging from freshman in high school down to a first grader. So I'm becoming a proficient homeschooler right now as well. So that's my crew, and this position in particular is very near and dear to me because that's actually the position in which I was hired into the company 17 years ago and continue today. And the roles and responsibilities have changed significantly over time, but they've just continued to build upon my experiences in the program. Let's take a look. Before we dive on in, and please feel free to use the chat feature and ask any questions. Some we may answer along the way, others will wait till the end to address. But before we dive in, let's address the elephant in the room. The world has changed significantly. That's not a news flash to any of you. All of our lives have been changed pretty significantly, and just want to let you know some of the things that we've been doing as a company to be responsive to the COVID-19 situation. One thing I would point out is, we're constantly trying to improve, to be better, and as it started to develop, long before we even had our first case announced in the state of Utah, we had already began to prepare. We work closely with the builder in Seattle who's been dealing with this issue now for a couple months, and we learned some of the lessons from them so that we could be better prepared and respond appropriately. Some of the things that you see that we point out aren't novel. Most companies are doing those, your stay at home when sick, particularly asking those who are in high-risk categories to please stay home, social distancing, closing things to appointment only, etc. Some of the things we really tried to lead out on were doing a special clean of our homes, and we call it our COVID clean. And so before a homeowner moves in, we do a special sanitizing, disinfecting clean of the entire home. And then that home is locked. And so the next people to touch that will be the actual homeowners. And so we try to leave this spotlessly clean. And it's great to point out here, Clark Ivory, as he is a part of the Economic Recovery Task Force. He was asked by the governor to help lead out. You may have seen him on a number of press conferences as he's been asked to address not only what we're doing for our business, but for the economy as a whole, because that's very important to our ethos and what we do. It's not just us. In fact, you would think in a time like this, it would be just us scrambling to make sure that we continue to lead out as the market leader. When in fact, yesterday afternoon, we hosted over 85 local home builders and shared with them the best practices that we put in place so that other builders in our market can benefit from those. And it's actually created a nice sharing culture where people are sharing some of the things they're doing that have worked well, that we continue to balance between the public health aspect and also continue in our business. And before you say, gosh, that seems a little insensitive, why are you guys still cranking away, even though they're issuing a lot of shutdown orders? Well, residential and commercial construction have been designated in every market across the country except for one, even in these shutdown orders, that it is an essential service. And so construction continues with additional precautions. So just wanted you to be aware of that. We are very sensitive to it, and we are working around the clock to address the issues, not only for our business, but also to be helpful to other businesses and the community at large as we're involved in these projects that are far beyond our borders. So hopefully that helps address several questions that many of you may have for starters. So who's Ivory Homes? Let's talk a little bit about the Ivory Companies. Ivory Companies is actually pretty broad. It encompasses a lot of different companies. We've highlighted a few that we'll discuss today in Ivory Homes, Ivory Innovation, and Ivory Foundation. And next, talk about some of the driving principles of our company. And this we call it the 5 Ps: people, product, process, planet, and profit. And we believe that if we take care of those first 4, being the people, the product, the process, and the planet, that the profit will take care of itself. And then a great quote here that we use often, that successful companies will always change, but their principles never do. I think that's very much at play right now as we respond to this COVID-19 situation. So what do? We build homes on our home building operations, anything from, this is I don't recall the exact price on it. I believe it was a $1.2, $1.4 million parade home in Draper. It won Best of Show, really a fantastic home. This is about a 6,000 square foot home, even though it may not look at it from the surface. And then the next slide will show you a little bit of other products that we do where we have really been focusing on affordability. It probably sounds insensitive to use the word crisis right now. So I apologize in advance for using that, given the current state of affairs. We really do see that we are in a housing crisis, not only in Utah, but across America, where affordability is becoming incredibly challenging, and where we have a situation that there is a huge housing gap in the state of Utah, and yet affordability and attainability continues to be a real challenge. And so we've worked in developing new products such as this, which is essentially a townhome pulled apart. So we're trying to develop more affordable, detached single-family housing to reach a greater part of the market. And just because it's more affordable doesn't mean that it can't be beautiful. This is one of our more basic homes and designs, but where we still try to have great style and design and provide tremendous value for our customers. Okay, I'll spend a minute on this slide because I think this tells a lot. I don't think I mentioned to you, I'm a finance grad from the U, and I apologize, my phone is blowing up. I need to turn these off. Just excuse me for 1 minute. Okay, thank you.
Do not disturb, activated.
This tells a pretty good story as to who we are as a company. If you look, and maybe Helaman, you can help me point to some of these, or can you see my cursor?
No, we can't see yours, but
if you can see Helaman's cursor, or you don't know whose it is, but okay. So if you look in the early 80s, we want to make this slightly interactive for 1 second. So who can tell me what was happening with interest rates in the early 80s? These are war stories. None of you are around to see these times. So
I'm pretty sure, right? Weren't interest rates pretty high? Like you could get a treasury bill that yielded like 15% or something like that.
Exactly. Home interest rates were hitting 18%. At the time, we were primarily a developer. That's what we did. We developed land and lots, and we had a ton of commitments from home builders. Well, all of a sudden, these home builders didn't want to fulfill those commitments. And we had an amazing inventory. And so we kind of started as a home builder out of desperation. And so during this time in the early 80s, we were just doing it to survive. So we're trying to build a few homes here or there to help move this inventory. Well, come the late 80s, did I say the late? That didn't come out right, but thank you for your patience. Late 80s, early 90s, we decided, hey, if we're going to do this, we better start doing it right. And so you can see a pretty consistent pattern starting then, and then in the early 90s through the early 2000s, that we were in a basic mode of doing about 500 homes a year. Well, I would call that during our entrepreneurial phase, where Ellis Ivory, who formed the company, was really focused, and he was happy in that sweet spot. But then you also have the next generation coming in, and Clark Ivory, our current owner and CEO, says, Dad, that's great, but I think there's more to be done here. And so that's when you start seeing a ramp up. And then all of a sudden you see in 06, 07, we all know what happened there. Obviously, the Great Recession and the impacts of mortgage markets, housing markets, et cetera, that there was a severe oversupply issue, and you can see what happened after that. We still maintain profitability. We continued to, in fact, during this time, we really rang the bell in 06 and said, this is unsustainable. In fact, at the time, Clark Ivory was a member of the San Francisco board of the Fed. And in one of his reports, he talked about these ghost towns that he had seen in Phoenix and other areas where there was a ton of homes that were sold, but no one was living in them. And so he came home, rang the bell, told other builders. He really blasted speculators, saying, this is coming our way. We need to be smart. And so instead of continuing to try to maximize profit through those times, we still had incredible demand, but we started paying down debt. And in 2009, in the middle of the Great Recession, we paid off all of our lines. We were a completely debt-free company. And it gave us incredible opportunities to become a cash buyer during that time and take advantage of additional opportunities. And so you say, gosh, do I really want to think about working for a home builder as we go into another crisis? We've worked through some pretty amazing crises in the past. and not only survived, but thrived and fought for another day when we've continued to be successful. You can see last year we built just over 1,000 homes and 1,100 homes. And this year, assuming we aren't thrown off too far by the current state of affairs, our goal is 1,250 homes. So it'll be our best year ever. So that's a lot of talking on that one slide. Thank you for your patience. I can tell that me just talking into a camera isn't as exciting or interactive as otherwise, but we're doing our best. Go ahead and advance there, Helaman. Okay, just to give you an idea of market share and our dominance in the Utah market, this is a look as of last fall as you take a peek at all of the home builders in Utah. These are the top 10 home builders since Construction Monitor started tracking data in 1990, where you see we're 3-to-1 of our nearest competitors in terms of the homes that we built. We aren't here to make a quick bang, a quick profit, and then move along. We're here for the long term. And so our focus remains in making smart decisions for the short and the long term. I'm going to turn the time over to Helaman, and he will be more succinct than I've been thus far and tell us a little bit more about other aspects of the Ivory companies. I should have explained up front, we're really divided this into 3 pieces. The first being the history of Ivory Homes, which is our mothership. The second, in the incredible community impact that we have and continue to strive to have. Third, a little bit more about the position itself. So Helaman, take it away.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so as Dave said, a big part of Ivory companies is, its efforts to create social impact, both through the business as well as through other community outreach activities. And so the 2 kind of hubs of these activities, as we see here on the screen, are Ivory Innovations and the Clark and Christine Ivory Foundation. So those 2 organizations, together with Ivory Homes, kind of spearhead all of these efforts. So first, obviously very near and dear to our hearts is, and as Dave was saying, is this crisis in housing affordability here in Utah and throughout the United States. So Ivory Homes is really leading nationally in these efforts to find ways to create affordable housing. Specifically, Ivory Innovations runs several programs that seek to kind of find these ideas, these innovative entrepreneurs, and then to support them and fund them. So the Ivory Prize, we'll watch a short little video about it, but it essentially finds out these entrepreneurs across the United States who are doing innovative things for housing affordability, and then looks to reward them, gives them some funding so they can continue their work. Hack a House is a really cool model that Ivory Innovations has started, and it has started to spread to other universities across the United States. It started here at the University of Utah. So has anyone participated or heard about Hack a House that's on the line?
Definitely heard of it.
Yeah, I definitely heard of it. I haven't participated myself though.
Got it. Yeah, so it basically just takes the hackathon model for kind of coding that it was originally used for, and has translated it to this brainstorming session for housing affordability. And so we take students, give them a set amount of time, and they just work, day and night for, 36 hours or whatever it may be. And then there's a competition and judges that will give prizes to the student teams that have the best ideas. Similarly, there's, the real estate center there at the University of Utah Obviously, Ivory Homes has very strong ties to the U, so it's been great to continue working through the U for some of these social impact efforts. So this should be a video.
The idea of the Ivory Prize really came in 2017 as I was surveying the market and really thinking about where things were going. And it made me think back to 2006 when we were one of the early identifiers of what was a housing market that was oversupplied. In 2017, we had a housing market that was undersupplied, and it seemed to be developing into a crisis. It's a big problem because not only do we have this gap, but there's some other fundamental things going on in the economy that's very challenging for housing. You see incomes rising, but the price of housing rising much quicker. The Ivory Prize is about innovation. It's about coming up with solutions. We've just got to do things, and focusing on the entrepreneurs, the innovators, can teach us all a lot. And sharing those ideas is what the Ivory Prize is all about.
So our city, like a lot of growing cities, has a lot of single-family neighborhoods really close to the downtown core. So the Alley Flat Initiative was really created as a way to put more units on the ground while still respecting that neighborhood culture that everybody here really treasures. So an Alley Flat is just a detached single-family house that's just built in the backyard of a single-family property. And through our program, that back house is occupied by a low-income renter. How we see ourselves operating in the future is to really be pulling together all of these different components of policy, research, design, and planning to make sure that the voices and leadership of the communities impacted are really present in making decisions about them.
What became clear to us was that the mortgage market was going to change significantly, and where it was very easy for people to get access to credit, it was going to become very difficult for a lot of Americans to get access to credit. One of the things that we focused on was how do we provide access to capital to get people into good communities and good homes, and so we came up with this idea of lease purchase. Instead of just renting a house to somebody, let's underwrite that individual as if they're buying the house, use some of the same metrics, let them pick the house they want to live in, we'll buy it for them, lease it to them, and they can buy it later on. Many families making $40,000, $50,000, even $60,000 a year have a very difficult time getting access to affordable housing. We have decided as a firm we will allocate $25 million of equity capital. And then, we're very fortunate that Citi has agreed to provide a low-cost loan. And what we're going to do is we're going to provide lower-cost capital to moderate-income consumers in the form of a rent subsidy. And what we're going to do is use the same model where we approve them, let them pick the house they want to live in, we'll buy it for them, lease it to them, and they can buy it later on. We're helping people get access to great quality housing.
I come at this work, my mom was a fourth grade school teacher, dad social worker, and it wasn't until we were able to own our home did fortune change for my family. So I kind of lived the experience of what it means to feel grounded and rooted once you're able to have permanent housing. So there's two parts to Landed. One part is a real estate brokerage that helps individual educators purchase homes, and we partner with real estate agents who actually help our educators buy a home. And then we have funds that we set up alongside outside nonprofit organizations that put money into these funds, and the money is available for down payment assistance. And so that down payment assistance goes into homes, and in the future, the home buyer pays back what they got and shares in some of the change in value of the home, either up or down, depending on what happens by the time they sell or refinance their home.
I was born and raised in San Francisco, and we wanted to make our home here, and it was really hard to do because we were always just saving just enough, and then the housing prices would go up, and then you'd save just enough and the housing prices would go up again. For us, owning a home meant we could stay here, and we were about a year away from moving about an hour and a half up to Petaluma, and Landed helped us not have to do that.
In 2014-15, as a developer, I was just looking at construction costs spiraling up. And so I sat down with Larry and said, I think we've got to do this with a different approach. I felt if we can build affordable housing at half the price of the spiraling number going up, we'll get twice as much out of it.
So the best way for me to describe the factory to you is we're roughly 256,000 square feet. Right here you see the floor of the actual module is being built. All right, James, how you doing, man? You're going to notice that all these floors are prepped and ready for interior wall sets. This is where both sidewall jigs are made. It's also where we go ahead and set the sidewalls on the boxes themselves. Don't film Rick without his hard hat. He's one of my worst offenders.
This unit is Unit 205 of the Union, our project at the corner of 5th and Magnolia, 1 block from the West Oakland BART station. So you'll be in a unit that you go, I got a meeting in San Francisco in 15 minutes. You can walk out your home, be on a train, and be in the city at that meeting in 15 minutes.
Great. So that was just a little look at last year's Ivory Prize winners. This year, the top 10 finalists have been announced. So I highly recommend that you go and take a look at some of those organizations. There are some really fascinating ideas out there. So moving on to kind of the next category, you know, even aside from our core competency of housing and housing affordability, we're always trying to impact the communities that we live in. So we've worked with several organizations you see here on the screen for, you know, helping to lift the poor. And so we've both, you know, given money and donated, as well as participated directly in some of these volunteering efforts. We've also tried to support children and schools. We see here, again, a few of the foundations and organizations that we've worked with to help children. And then moving on to kind of more general education. So the Clark and Christine Ivory Foundation has given out 519 scholarships. This is kind of the Dreamer Scholarship Program through the Clark and Christine Ivory Foundation. Many of them have gone to students here at the U. We also have partnerships with other local universities like UVU, Weber State, and BYU. So that has been amazing to see the impact that those scholarships have had on these students' lives. And this has been a great way for Ivory to be able to give back to the community. This is my personal favorite program of Ivory's. So this is the Workforce Housing Program, where Ivory Homes will specifically set aside its most affordable housing options with special financing packages for public servants. So this is teachers, nurses, you know, police officers, firefighters, all of these public servants. Ivory wants to support them in their efforts to give back to the community by allowing them to have these special deals on some of the most affordable housing options. So this is something that I think is really, really awesome, and I love that Ivory does that and is looking out for these people that are looking out for us. And then lastly here we have Ivory's sustainability efforts. Ivory Homes is always, you know, in talks with people about kind of the latest innovations and how to make housing more sustainable. And so this is everything from, you know, including green options on all of the houses we build. All of the houses we have are EV ready, which means they have the necessary equipment and plugs for someone who has an electric vehicle. All of the homes have green landscaping, which means you need to use less water to be able to water it, and it's more efficient. I'll let Dave talk a little bit more about that, but one last piece that I want to highlight is this 10,000 tree initiative that Ivory has been involved with. And we have both funded and gone out to physically volunteer and plant some of these trees. And the goal is to plant 10,000 trees in the state of Utah to be able to give back to the environment and you know, contribute positively to it. So Dave, I think you know a little more about these efforts than I do, so I'd love to hear anything else you want to add to this. Are you still on the line, Dave? Looks like we may have lost him.
I apologize there.
Yes.
Hey, I sincerely apologize. You want me to dovetail some of this and talk about some of our efforts here?
Yeah, so I just gave a quick overview, but I know that you know a little more in depth than I do.
Yes, the boss came into my office for a moment, so I apologize. So
no worries.
Some of the efforts, as you see, all of our homes starting in January are now EV ready. And so we're putting in the infrastructure so that all the wiring to accommodate these EV ready chargers. In fact, we're working with utilities to offer these at a very affordable price. We also have our 30,000 tree initiative, which was mentioned, and where we're looking to plant over 30,000 trees, as it would suggest, over the next 10 years. We're already well ahead of our pace on that. The last report I saw is we were up to 6,400 trees. And there's been some really cool projects relating to that, such as one that my 5th grade daughter had suggested to help honor a beloved teacher who had passed away. And so we went and planted some trees at her school, which was very cool. Obviously, really a push for cleaner air. It's a massive problem here in the state of Utah, and we want to help do our part. And we can do that also through having more efficient homes. You'll see we have our HERS score. I won't go into the details of that except to say that 100 is a code minimum home. And it's like golf, the lower the better. We're building that at an incredibly efficient rate. And so the emissions from homes are extremely low, much lower than other homes out there. If you have a 10-year-old home right now, and even if it was built to pretty energy efficient standards, it's probably a 120. And obviously that can mean dollars and cents to people, as you see one of our ads there to save money on utilities. And then this tree planting, I thought this was kind of cool to include this photo. You guys, some of you sports fans, even though it may seem like it's been forever that we've been able to enjoy some sports, may recognize the face here of the beloved Kyle Korver. But when he came back, when he was traded, his wife was really drawn to our company because of our focus on some of these green initiatives. And she said, well, gosh, if I buy a house, will you let me participate in some of these plantings? And we said, yeah, that'll be fine. So that was cool to get them involved, even though his time in Utah was short-lived. He still maintains that residence and loves the state. So probably more than you wanted right now, Helaman, but thank you.
Thanks, Dave. So this last part of the presentation, we just wanted to dive a little deeper into the specific role that we're hiring for. So this project manager reporting to the CEO or the management training program, as Dave said, this is where he entered the company and where he started his career. You know, this role will essentially be performing a number of special projects for Clark Ivory, our CEO. So as you can see here, it covers a wide range of different types of projects, whether it comes to market research, analytics, as well as new product development. I know that when Dave was in this role, he had the opportunity to scope out a new market that Ivory was looking to expand into. And so Dave got to do a lot of the legwork there to prepare for those efforts to enter this new market. Strategic planning, community outreach. So a lot of the, the social impact efforts that we mentioned, those are going to be a big part of this program. I know Dave has said this before to some candidates, that if you're looking for a role that is going to have a nice, neat, tidy job description that is going to tell you exactly, what you will be doing, this might not necessarily be the right role for you, because what this really is an opportunity to get a broad look at the company and to really be involved in just the various issues that are on Clark's mind at any given time. So for that reason, the variety of issues that you will be working with will be very wide and will likely be different than what some of the people that have been in this position in the past did it during their time. But I think that provides this role it means that this role is a great opportunity to get a broad look at the business and to see how this business is run, how Clark manages the entire portfolio of the business. And so it's a great opportunity. Really quickly, before we start taking questions for you guys, I just wanted to highlight one of the people that has previously been in this role. And if you've looked at the job description that's on Handshake, you'll see that we have a few short professional profiles of several people who have been in this role in the past. This was one that I thought was particularly insightful, especially because of what he told me about the impact that this role has had on his career. So this is Ryan Prowse. He started out in this role after graduating from college. He spent a couple years here at Ivory, after which he went to Stanford Graduate School of Business. So that is another aspect of this role that is big. Here at Ivory, we have a very big mentorship culture, and Clark is an incredible mentor to everyone who steps into this role. Almost everyone that I spoke to, said Clark was a great mentor for me as I was preparing to go to business school, and several of them, including Ryan, specifically credited their experience here at Ivory in this program to helping them both to get into their business schools as well as to succeed. And so Ryan told me, the ability to see how a business owner runs his business, he said, it really gave him a leg up once he went to Stanford, having already seen several aspects of the business, both the strategy, the finance, the risk management, and all of that. So he after going to Stanford, he transitioned actually to go into healthcare, and this was something he wanted me to stress to everyone that was applying. He said, even if you're not sure whether real estate or home building is the place for you, this opportunity is a great way for you to develop kind of these general management skills that are needed in any sector, in any industry. And so he went on to go to McKesson. He ended up going into a few healthcare technology startups, doing kind of their strategic partnerships there. So now he's come back to Utah. He's the director of real estate at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So he has actually come back into the real estate sector. But he said this program is a general management track that gives you those hard skills that prepare you for a top MBA program, that prepare you to go on and become a business leader, whether it be here in the home building industry or whether it be in another industry or another sector. So with that, we would love to take any questions. I don't think I saw any questions through chat, but feel free to either chat them in or unmute yourself and just let us know any questions you have either about Ivory as a company or about this role more specifically.
Yeah, I have a question if nobody's going to jump in yet. So does Ivory just focus on like single family residential development, or have you ever kind of dabbled in multifamily, commercial real estate?
Helaman, I'm happy to take that if you'd like.
Great.
So yes, in fact, we have a commercial division. It's called Ivory Commercial, or better known as ICO Construction, where we primarily focus on for rent, multifamily housing, apartment homes, and we also do some additional tilt up. We do some other office, retail, industrial. I think I already mentioned that. My apologies. Construction. So on average, we complete about 500 multifamily units a year as part of that sister company, part of the Ivory Company's umbrella.
Thank you.
You bet.
One thing just to add on that, in case you're curious, that most of the multifamily that Ivory does is actually managed also by Ivory. So we manage a lot of those, apartment buildings.
Yes, we do have a full property management team that does all the service, leasing, etc., for those properties, which the vast majority of them are retained in our portfolio. We do third-party jobs as well. However, the majority of it is for our portfolio.
Unless somebody else has a question, but on a single family development basis, how do you typically finance these kind of deals? Are you looking for equity? Do you do it mostly through debt? What kind?
Great question. So we don't do anything on an equity basis. We do it with our own cash as well as a traditional line of credit with syndicates with multiple banks.
Great questions.
Yeah, very good questions. This is my favorite part, so please fire away. Are you watching the chat line there as well, Helaman?
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on it.
I got a question for you, Dave. If you have a
Please,
second.
is this Derek?
Yeah, this is Derek. Given that the job description might not completely cover everything that's going to be what you're actually going to do within this position, what skills have you seen, or maybe majors that people have that have been like really strong candidates and really strong like with regard to their futures later in management? Like maybe what specific things have you seen with those candidates?
Terrific. I'll attempt to address all those aspects, and please pipe in if I don't, if I miss something. First off, in terms of skills, interpersonal skills are absolutely critical. The person who works in this job is immediately thrown into the fire, if you will, in working with clerks, contacts, whether those be local and national, working with chambers of commerce, working with government officials, etc. And so we need someone who is confident in their ability to communicate and carry themselves well. Analytical skills are huge. There's a lot of projects diving deep into due diligence projects, different opportunities. So I would say two of the biggest, even though we could go into detail on a lot of others, are interpersonal skills as well as analytical abilities. And I apologize, I've now forgotten. Oh, in terms of the majors and backgrounds that have been helpful, we don't expect people to come with a huge bucket of tools in terms of the real estate. We can teach a lot, but we want people who are very capable, very flexible, and we feel like we can teach a lot of these elements as we go. Most of the candidates who have thrived in this program have come through the business schools.
I'll ask another question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Derek, go ahead.
Susie.
I'm just curious if there's certain technology or software for the analytical skills that you have found helpful for the candidate.
Very good question. We use a lot of technology, but as you can probably see in my background here, we also think there's a lot of value in spreadsheets and whiteboards. Sometimes we overthink things. We do use a lot of different softwares and such, but somebody who can really navigate Excel and on a more advanced level, more advanced than I am, will do very well in the sort of analytics that we look to accomplish. Does that answer your question, Susie?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Derek, I believe you had another question.
Yeah, yes, sorry. I'm still having a tough time understanding kind of the whole process. Could you walk us through like what a typical development looks like from like purchasing like the land to selling your homes?
Awesome. I'd love to address that.
Sorry, that's kind of a big one.
No, it's great. One of the things that I should apologize for is one of my roles in the company, in addition to overseeing operations, is HR and risk management. And so you can imagine that the last few weeks have been terribly exciting. And I just got a very exciting text, just informing me that our first employee who was tested for COVID-19, the test came back negative. And so feeling pretty happy at the moment. So let's talk about the process as much as possible from A to Z. And the cool part, I think, about what we do is we do the vast majority of the work. This would start from land acquisition, where we're buying raw vacant land, often from farmers or people who have held this land in their families for generations. We will take that through the entitlement process through cities. Once we have our entitlements in place and our approvals, we would then move our plan. Of course, there's a lot of plans that are drawn up according to the zoning, et cetera. And then we would begin construction. And that construction would consist of your horizontal improvements. So that's your sewer, water, electricity, et cetera, roads, gutters, storm drains, everything that goes into the infrastructure of a project. Next, we would offer those for sale, and we have an in-house sales team, and they would select their home plan. We have in-house architectures and architectural designers, as well as interior designers that will help them modify their home to personalize that to their desires. From there, once the submittals have happened with the engineers as well as cities, we would get a permit and we turn that over to our construction team. Our construction team oversees as a general contractor. We self-perform very little work. The vast majority is through contractors that we hire. Complete construction of the home, closing of the home. We actually are affiliated with a mortgage company that helps with that process, and then close on the home. And we have a full service warranty team who then takes care of the home after closing. So it's a very long process. In fact, that process sometimes lasts 20 to 25 years when everything's said and done. From the time of land acquisition, our current project in Park City, that took over 10 years of work on entitlements and improvements until we actually turned a shovel of dirt. And We will build homes in there for probably the next decade. And then after that, we have a 10-year obligation for our structural warranty. So it's even longer than 20 years in some instances. Staying power is critical.
Dave, this is Greg.
Yeah.
I think Ivory has been really aggressive on infill projects as well. Do you want to talk about some of your different strategies that you have with the home building process?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, often people, as you know, Greg referenced, think of us as, you know, we'll buy a big piece of land and some open area, like what used to be Lehigh, and that's not exactly open anymore, or West Jordan or South Jordan or other areas. And we traditionally will build in a multi-phase master plan community for a decade or more. Now, as Greg had referenced, we do have a strategy of finding infill locations, as we refer to them, in the Holidays, in Mill Creeks, and Sandies, and other places that have incredible appeal to people who love the area but don't want to live in a 70 or 100-year-old home. And so that has been a key part of our acquisition strategy, is to constantly have those infill opportunities throughout the Wasatch Front. So we'll do that in Davis, Salt Lake, in Utah counties primarily, where we'll go into these very sought after areas. They're very difficult projects to put together often, but there is incredible demand for these type of opportunities. I don't know if did that appropriately answer your question, Greg?
Yeah, and could you just define a little bit more about what infill is for some of the students that may not know?
Terrific, I'd be happy to. So an infill project could be, in some instances, it's a piece of land that has surprisingly remained vacant over time. There was a little piece off of 3900 South where I grew up that was a vacant land that we used to cross through on our way to 7-Eleven, and it had been vacant that entire time, and we had the opportunity to come in and build there. Other times it could be a case where you have some older dilapidated homes where we may purchase those, take those homes away, redevelop it into a mini subdivision, and take it from there. So that is our typical infill location, which could be either raw land or a series of homes or a series of parcels or land pieces that we'll put together to make a community. Another great example of that is one that we did that's a very high-end project called Pheasant Cove, just off of Highland Drive near the Cottonwood Mall, for some of you who are aware of that. That project took about 12 years to go through the acquisition, entitlement, and development process before homes were built. Another example of that would be our Watson Hollow community that's off of Creek Road in the Cottonwood Heights area, where that's a compilation of, I believe it was 6 or 7 landowners to put together a very high-end 35 lot subdivision.
And if I could just put a plug in for this opportunity right now, you look at where we're at in terms of the number of people that are moving into the state and how our state is growing right now. We have a housing shortage, and it's a desperate housing shortage. You look at the absorption rate of new build and how quickly those are taken up by our community. It's as little as 3 months sometimes. So, and then with everything that's going on with COVID-19 and how it's changing the landscape of how people are able to afford homes and how they're able to still plan for the future, even though this is a temporary blip. What a unique time to participate in something like this, where the dynamics of the market are so unique, and what you would be able to see and participate in while going through this sort of experience, I think it would be phenomenal for any student to participate in.
Thank you, Greg. We appreciate that. We feel very much the same. One thing, given today's current environment, as was referenced with COVID-19, is one thing that really gives me heart in a time like this is we are in a business where home, when you think about it, home is more important than ever right now. It provides solace, it provides comfort, it provides refuge. And people are understanding that more and more as many are shut in right now.
Hey, Dave, I have a quick question for you kind of regarding the whole COVID-19 environment. Yes. So you mentioned previously in the presentation how you've got pretty good growth the last couple of years and you expect this year to be your best year by, I think it was you projected 1,450 homes to be closed.
Correct.
Goal is still achievable given like the current economic situation with everyone kind of panicking. How do you see that affecting your growth in the company?
That's a great question. You know, we are proceeding with appropriate level of caution. The good news is that we continue to sell homes. At last look, we were at about 110 home closings. 110 new home sales for the month. And we have closed month to date 92 homes, which is pretty incredible. Obviously, those people were already in process, but we have continued to sell homes even after the COVID-19 scare has come about. The interesting thing is you just see a lot fewer tire kickers. The people who are interested are very interested and they're moving forward. We continue with our operations with full force. We will start about 110 homes this month on the single family side alone. And so we are continuing to operate with caution, but also at the same time under the assumption that this will be a shorter term issue. And that if we are smart, and that's not just Ivory, but as a community, as a state, as a country, that this will be a shorter term impact. One thing that all of you may find of interest, I imagine we have a lot of students from the business school who are involved here. And regardless of what your background may be, the governor released a plan, and it's referred to the, I apologize, Helaman, can you think of the name of that plan right off the top of your head? If you do, please pipe in. But this was released 2 days ago, and our team was very instrumental in the drafting of this and helping out, lay out timelines of one of response, one of recovery, and then one of continuation. And so we're being very realistic about the issues there. Will it have an impact? Yeah, it will have an impact. We just don't know yet how severe it'll be. We know that housing is an essential portion of our economy, and that's been recognized not only locally, but on a national scale. And so we continue to do that with proper precautions. As Greg had mentioned, we do have a huge housing gap. When you take up all the homes that are to be built, and this is everything from for rent, for sale, condos, townhomes, traditional single family, et cetera, there's still a gap of over 50,000 homes right now in the units that are actually being brought to market and the growth of our state, primarily internal growth as well as a significant immigration based on our incredibly strong economy.
Hey Dave, I got a quick question regarding the the process that we were kind of discussing earlier on the A to Z of building the houses and how that works. You mentioned that a lot of the process up to the actual construction and contracting of the homes is pretty internal with engineers and dealing with all that stuff. What kinds of things are you doing to build trust with those third-party contractors that they're going to be able to provide, such a successful company with the things that you're asking for and the deadlines you're asking for them to do it in? And then a kind of follow-up to that, is there any part of working with third parties that worries you guys at all? And is that, is taking the construction part and everything thereafter towards an internal, is that, something that can be looked at?
Excellent questions. I'll do my best to address those. In terms of third parties, we do work with a lot of them. Kind of a cool note, a couple of years ago, we started designating what we refer to as a Silver Elephant Award. And that is given to trade partners, associates, etc. So that would comprise of a subcontractor, a supplier, an associate, which would be engineers, maybe attorneys, bankers, etc. And we caught up on everybody who would fall into that 25-year category. And we've done that in 2 subsequent years. And we have now honored over 70 companies or individuals who we have that sort of longevity with. One of the things, and I'm going to go back in the history annals here for a minute, when we talked in the early 80s about the crisis with interest rates and going up to 18% and people not buying land, that obviously put a huge crunch on cash for the company. Well, we paid off every penny of that debt during that time. We may not have paid it on time, but we were constantly working with banks and others and absolutely made everybody whole. We paid all of our subcontractors through those times. That builds incredible trust and loyalty. And we continue to operate on the same principles of that. And so we are a very high priority, if not the top priority, for a vast majority of our subcontractors, suppliers, engineers, etc. To your point, there obviously is some risks there when it comes to a situation like today's environment. What happens if you get community spread within a civil engineering office? Well, hopefully their recovery rate is high and those people are taken care of, but it absolutely would have a hit on our business. Do we have in-house engineers and others who could help fill some of that gap? Yeah, absolutely, but it would be more of a short-term solution. And so, yes, there is some risk and some challenges if some of our partners were to be hit with one of these issues. One of the principles that we've often and we implement is we are always at least 2 deep, if not 3 or 4 deep, in every aspect of our business. While we have, for example, I'll use a ready mix or a concrete supplier, we have a primary supplier, but we have a secondary and a tertiary supplier as well to maintain those relationships, to not be too beholden to anyone who could have issues of any sort, regardless of what those might be. So hopefully that helps, Nolan, maybe answer some of your questions.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Good. Checking the chat line. Any others with questions that we could be helpful of? I appreciate everyone's patience. This is, while we've used Zoom as a company for a number of years, this is definitely not my favorite method when it comes to working with a group and being able to get real-time feedback as to what is important to you as well. So thank you for your patience, but would love to answer any additional questions that you might have. Well, you want to wrap us up here, Helaman?
Sure. Well, thank you everyone for the questions, for the involvement. The applications for the position are open until the end of the month. We are, trying to go through those applications and make those interview decisions as quickly as possible. So the sooner you all can get your applications in, the sooner we can make those decisions. So I encourage you to go to Handshake, submit your resume. As the position description says on Handshake, this is the idea for this program is to take someone who's currently a junior, have them work part-time through their senior year, and then to come on full-time once they finish school. That being said, we're accepting applications from people who are, may not fit that timeline exactly. So if you're concerned about that, go ahead and, apply anyways, and we'll take a look. And, if there's someone that we really like, we're certainly willing to look at what adjustments we can make, or see if there's a different spot where you could fit in. So yeah, go ahead and please submit your applications. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions that weren't addressed today. But with that being said, thank you for coming, and we're looking forward to seeing your applications come in and continuing to, talk to some of you as we go throughout that interview process. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
David and Helaman, thank you so much for your time today. That was a great presentation. And so once you have the recording all finalized and cleaned up, Helaman, if you just want to send that over to me, and then I can get it out to everyone.
Great, I will do that.
Okay. Well, hope
Greg.
everyone is safe and well, and that's really good news, Dave, about your employee with that tested negative on COVID. So it's time.
these are wild times. My children are being and they don't understand why